Good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Outer West Community Committee. My name is Councillor Adrian McCluskey, and I will be chairing today's meeting. I'd like to apologise that we have had a late start, but today has been very disruptive insofar as we've had to move sites due to no water at Farnley Hall. So apologies for the late start. Today's meeting is being live streamed in the City Council YouTube channel so that the public can observe the meeting without needing to be present. The Outer West Community deals with the community-based issues in Outer West Leeds and covers Calverley and Farsley, Farnley and Wortley and Pudsey wards. Could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves and mute your microphone once you've introduced yourself. We've got microphones this time, folks.
Good afternoon, I'm Natalie Smith and I'm the Localities Officer for Outer West.
Good afternoon, Rachel Marshall, Programme Manager in the Communities team.
Hello, Councillor Kate Haig, Farnley and Wortley Labour and Cooperative.
Good afternoon, Craig Timmins, Calverley and Farsley ward.
Good afternoon, Councillor Peter Carlill, Calverley and Farsley ward.
Hi, Jo Lapele, Connecting Lead, Senior Project Officer within Highways and Transport.
Rupert Oldfield, Transport Strategy Team Leader in Highways.
Councillor Simon Seary from the Pudsey ward.
Councillor Dawn Seary, Pudsey ward.
Councillor David Blackburn, Farnley and Wortley ward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Trish Smith, I represent Pudsey ward.
Councillor Andrew Carter, Calverley and Farsley ward.
Hi everyone, Natasha Prosser, Committee Clerk.
Thank you, everyone. If I could ask the clerk to go through agenda items 1 to 5, please.
Thanks, Chair. Agenda item 1, there's no appeals. Agenda item 2, there's no items excluded from the press and the public. Agenda item 3, no formal late items. Agenda item 4, members to declare any interest. Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. We'll be discussing an application from the Pudsey Wellbeing Charity, and I am a trustee, so I'll be abstaining from that vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just to confirm, I'm Chairman of Pudsey Carnival and also Pudsey Christmas Lights, which we'll be discussing funding on.
Thanks, Chair. Agenda item 5, there's no apologies.
I thought it was on. Sorry, I'll repeat that just for the benefit. This is an open forum where members of the public are invited to make representations or to ask on matters within the terms of reference of the Community Committee. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak? There's nobody here. Okay. Minutes. Now, item number 7, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 4th of November. Do members accept these minutes as a true record, true and a correct record? I'll assume so. If that's okay. Any matters arising from those minutes? Councillor Carlisle.
Thank you, Chair. On one of the actions points at 36, Natalie, you sent an email to Inspector Lise Jones with a number of points. Did we get a response to those? I know we've got crime figures and such later on, but there were some quite specifics in there.
Thank you, Councillor. I have chased Lise. I haven't had a response, but I will continue to do so.
Sorry, I had a follow-up to follow up the types of locks used in Leeds City Council's housing stock, and was confirmed, and I sent emails around to all members to confirm that they are the suitable types of locks as recommended by Inspector Lise. Thank you. Right. Item number 8 is the Outer West Community Committee Finance Report. Thank you. Over to Natalie.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so agenda item 8, Finance Report. The committee is asked to note that so far a total of £87,820.65 has been allocated or ring-fenced for wellbeing budget. The remaining balance is £14,044.10. The information is on table 1, and I'll now go through the applications. So wellbeing applications for consideration, we've got Carveley in Bloom, Farsley in Bloom, Newfoundland in Bloom, Pudsey in Bloom, and additional area resource, which I believe we need to have discussion with Parks to work out what we would like to have done with those.
Thank you.
So currently these will be deferred. Regarding Pudsey Carnival, this is an amount for £2,600. Pudsey Carnival Committee. This starts on the 17th of May. Okay. Food and Fun Project delivered by the Oak Church. This is the Oak Church, and they're asking for £3,900. It's my understanding that we had to return to the Oak Church to ask for some more information and potentially signpost it in a West. So moving on to YAF. So far there is £41,498.43 which has been allocated by projects and ring fences, which is listed in table 2. There's currently £6,750 and 19 pence left in the Youth Activity Fund budget. I will now go through the YAF applications for consideration. The Rock Up to do a mock-up and City and Guilds qualification. This is to be funded through YAF for £6,720. Through wellbeing.
Clearly we need to clarify that. There seems to be some confusion as to which fund that's coming out. That's noted. Councillor Smith, thank you. Councillor Carlisle?
Yeah, I think when looking through the project, we had enough that we could fund through the remaining of both pots, but I'm not sure entirely we accurately collected each one. So I don't know what's best for us to do now, approve a total and then work out exactly which budget's coming from afterwards. I know certainly some of the YAF ones we decided to spend through wellbeing, but I'm not sure we specifically mentioned each project.
Feels like there's further clarification needed for us before we can proceed in terms of sign off. Okay. But we did cover all of the budgets. It's just at the minute we seem to be confusing between wellbeing and YAF. Yeah. So that's the element that needs clarification, and members need to know what that is. Thank you.
Are you happy for me to provide a breakdown after the meeting, Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so Dazzle 25 Family Dance Programme. That's Dazzle Action Zone Leeds. £4,138.20. I've got this through wellbeing, but potentially after the meeting it could be YAF. Rhinos Multisports Camps. Leeds Rhinos for £6,000. We've got that through wellbeing, but again that might have changed. The youth service projects of it, Andy's Youth Project, Family Wortley and Kicks, Outer West School Holiday Programme and Family Youth Club is not funded through this year's budget, but potentially for next year's budget. The Pudsey Youth Cafe, that is to be ring-fenced for next year's budget, and that's Pudsey Wellbeing Charity, and that's for £4,000. Okay. Moving on to small grants and skips. The committee has advised that they allocated £3,765.17, and there is a remaining of £1,234.83 left in small grant ring fence. Moving on to capital, there is a total amount for the community committee of £23,834.26 available to spend. We've got one application for capital spend which comes under Carvin Farsley. This is parking buddies for Farsley Farfield Primary School. Councillor Carlisle might be able to explain this a little bit more for you, Chair.
Councillor Carlisle.
Thank you, Chair. Members will remember we funded one set of these per ward previously, and I was in Carvin Farsley ward, still at Bolton Royd Primary School, where I very much would be reticent to take them away from there to move them to another site. This particular site, I've had communication from various parents and the head teacher about the danger of the roads around there. The dangerous parking it mentions there, but actually the more concerning is because you can only fit one car at a time down the road, is cars mounting the pavement in front of children walking to school in order to try and bypass each other. Now, there probably are safe alternatives to that, such as reversing a short way and ducking into the side and various things. So while these also, as we've seen the parking buddies before, the little characters, they'll provide a reminder that people should park safely, but also there will be a physical barrier sat there on the pavement so cars cannot mount the pavement and drive along it in order to try and overtake. There is another project which I've talked to about with highways officers around a more long-term solution, which I think we'll come on to later, but this seems to me a good solution to that. The school will store these, put them out at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, but it's similar to what we've had elsewhere, and as I say, I was reticent for us to move those from a school where actually they're working very well.
Thank you, Councillor Carlisle. Any thoughts, Councillor Carter?
Yeah, I support Chair. It's I'm afraid it's not the only school where we have these problems. We've got them, but I have to say it's probably the joint worst for a junior school in the ward. The other one being Bolton Royd. But I'm in favour of this. Anything that makes the situation at all safer has to be welcomed. Unfortunately, private developers and indeed the council are looking to build more houses in the area, and if they're built without proper safeguards for highways, it's going to remain a nightmare outside this school. It's something the council will have to look at extremely seriously, but I do support this.
I think universally parking outside schools is a nightmare, particularly primary schools, because kids have to be not just dropped off, but taken in. Any other thoughts on this proposal? Those who approve? Any against? Any abstentions? That's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So next is the SIL budget, 24-25. The Community Committee is asked to note there is a current SIL balance of £203,309.79 available to spend. The breakdown is in Table 5. There is one application for SIL funding, and that's through Farnley and Wortley Ward. This is for the clubhouse at Farnley Football Club. They are asking for £10,000 and they've got match funding. Looking to start the project on the 1st of March, and they've provided details and planning permission.
Wortley Football Club. Farnley. No, this is an important community area. As I say, members from Farnley and Wortley would say how little we do have in Farnley and Wortley. This is some of the positive stuff that we have. This is a previous submission, which there was an anomaly, and the club withdrew that submission. This is now tidied up. It's for £10,000. They are prepared to match fund with £80,000. It is a desperately needed facility. At the minute, there's just fields or football pitches. So this would be a really good extra bonus to the community of Farnley and Wortley. Wortley Boys is a long-established football club and a long-established social resource that we have in this community. Councillor Haig.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to support those words and say that, you know, the ability of the football club to hold events and use the building that it's going to create to fund itself will make it much more sustainable in the future. So I see this very much as an invest to really help the community.
Thank you, Councillor Haig. Councillor Blackburn.
You're using wrong wording there. It ain't Wortley Boys anymore. We aren't allowed to call them that. It's Wortley Football Club. Obviously, I support this. They've come a long way since they took over managing that land and done a lot there. They've got changing rooms in. Now this gives them some extra facilities.
Quite right for picking me up on that, Councillor Blackburn. I would just forget because my son used to play for them. Any other comments? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It's not on the application. Is that okay to bring it in at this point, or would you prefer I wait? Sorry. It's regarding the wording in the table. So you've got Pudsey Fartown Lower Hall project down for £10,000, which is no problem there, but it's actually the Pudsey Community Project. So the wording needs changing so that we know when we're looking back on things, that we know what we funded, because that makes no sense to anybody, Pudsey Fartown Lower Hall project.
Okay.
So it's just a wording point, thank you.
Can I be advised on that, please, Natalie?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's what they'd put on the application, but happy to change on our record so it's easy to identify. Thank you.
Is that everything okay for you, Councillor Smith? Yep. Any other comments? Is this application approved? Anyone against? Any abstentions? That's approved. Thank you. Moving on to ring fences. The ring fences is looking at things like Christmas lights, etc. I was wondering, should we defer this to June until we know what the budgets are? Are all members happy with that? Councillor Carlow.
Thank you, Chair. The only one that's in there that probably will happen earlier was Farsley Festival. I think the main open discussion on that was whether, because approximately half of that, I think, goes to fund the breeze that is at Farsley Festival. So it was whether they should put an application in that included that or didn't include that, depending on whether they were able to add to it. So I think maybe, I don't know what the update is on that, and maybe you can give it, but otherwise I'd suggest we would look to see whether we want to approve a ring fence for the same amount as last year for Farsley Festival.
Members, any thoughts?
They have made arrangements now. They have made arrangements now, Chair, have they, to make sure they aren't liable for VAT, following the point I made a few months ago.
I need to put that to the organisers of Farsley Festival.
Do you mean in terms of, well, one of the options was to see whether the council could pay Breeze directly, and I think that was something you were looking into, Natalie, so I'm not sure if you've got an update on that.
Thank you, Councillor. So yeah, as Edward mentioned before, we'd looked into it. I'd got the clarification this week that it would be a no. It would need to be paid directly to the organisation for them to pay from a finance and audit perspective, is what I've been advised. I've spoken to the organiser just to make them aware of, we've not got a definite yes or a no. And what usually happens, we usually ring fencers and then they bring the application to June. So I just need to give them an update on what we would be ring fencing if that was the case. And the same with obviously the Leeds Watch ones. we'll need to ring fence that one because it will need to be ring fenced for June's meeting.
Thank you, and that's a contracted cost to the other committee. Is there anything else then? Oh, sorry.
You say it's contracted. So are we going to be affected by the increase in national insurance then?
I've not heard any that is the case.
Well, I think we could do with some clarification by email, please.
Yeah.
Because at most contracted services, the council has found to its cost that it will be liable for increased NIC from April, as have the police.
Yep. Can we please have that clarified? Thank you, Natalie.
Okay, that's fine. So regarding Farsley Festival, our members looking to ring fence the 4,000.
Question to all members. Are we happy to ring fence the cost of the festival? Yep, that's approved.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing from the YAF perspective, obviously the youth summit we can look at in June, is Breeze in the Park. I know we've got some questions to go back to them regarding the sessions and some issues from members, but whether the members would like to ring fence 11,400 from next year's budget.
Can I just take from Councillor Seary first?
No, it's just we'll ring fence the summer bands in the park. Have we got an update from the events team that put any bands in, or
I haven't.
should we be mindful to ring fence because I'm presuming they should be booking them in sooner bands?
This is next year's bands in the park. So they'll put their application in November. So potentially we could look to ring fence that in June's meeting, unless it's something that members want to do at this meeting.
We've already approved this summer's. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Anything else, Natalie? Any other comments on the finance report? Councillor Smith.
Chair, did we put a ring fence in for the skips and small? I know we don't do skips, but skips and small grants, because I didn't notice that. We talked about it, but we never said that we were going to ring fence it or give the amount.
We could do that this one, or if you want to do that in June, Chair, it's up to you. It's normally £5,000. That's how it's sort of been every year.
Will everyone happy if we delay that till June meeting? Thank you. Any other comments on the finance report? Okay, I'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the Outer West Community Committee update report. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the update report as read. They're just things that I would like to raise. As you remember from the last committee, Inspector Leeds Jones did attend to discuss issues around burglaries. You'll notice that Pudsey burglary has gone down, Farnley and Whateley has gone up, and Carvely and Farsley have gone down. As advised, I have chased Inspector for a response regarding the actions that we've requested. I've not had anything back, but I will continue to chase this.
Any comments? Because I'm quite concerned. Councillor Timmins, I'll take yours first.
Yep, so just in terms of the crime figures, so 3 points if I may just on this. In terms of residential burglaries, it's encouraging that we've seen a fall both versus the previous 6 weeks and year on year. However, coming with the slight caveat that we've had some snowy weather which would discourage would-be criminals. I mean, you'll be aware, Chair, that I've raised this every Outer West meeting, so it's good to see some of the initiatives from the police around awareness that we as a committee have been pushing, coming through, although early days, seem to be having some effect. So really happy with that. Second point around shoplifting. So credit to the police on this, because they've been working hard on this. They've been conducting operations. They've made a significant arrest, which has been massive. So thank you to Sergeant Stead and the MPT team for that. And then my final point, if I may, just on antisocial behaviour. it's good that these figures are now included, as they weren't previously, and I think I requested it in June. As an action point, can I just ask us to go back to the police and just ask if there are any specific locations for the youth antisocial behaviour in the Carvely and Farsley ward, so that we can work with our partners to get some targeted work done? Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Timmon. I was just, your comment about the snow. I was met the next morning in the snow with Wortley Watch, with a group of lads trying round doors in the snow in the local area. So it didn't distract them at all. But I'm quite concerned that ours burglaries have increased quite significantly, up 15 in the period. Sorry, I was cut across your neck, Councillor Arnall.
I was just going to say, Councillor, I'll take that back and raise it with the police, but is it something that members from other wards would like that information from Pudsey and Farnley and Wortley as well? And I can do it all in one email then.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. In previous years, we've ring-fenced an amount for the police, just in case they put an application in for additional needs, so we can be agile in case of a particular spike. And I wondered whether it would be prudent for us to discuss that in June as well. I noticed they haven't yet put an application in this year so far, but I do think we need to be mindful of that, because you know, crime is on the increase, and the police are doing an amazing job, but I do think that they do need our support as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any thoughts on that? Councillor Carter.
I'm concerned about antisocial behaviour. It's good to see a number of the crime indicators have moved back in the right direction. At our last meeting, certainly in Carvey and Farsley Ward, they were completely unacceptable in terms of burglaries to residential properties. And as regards to shoplifting, it was one major contributor to the statistics, I'm afraid to say. I won't say where it was, but the ward members all know. And the action, as Councillor Timmerson said, taken by the police has been excellent. I raised concerns about safety of the staff after we got these statistics, because the perpetrators of the shoplifting, I think, were an interesting mix, shall we say, and leave it at that. The police have have taken the appropriate action. Antisocial behaviour generally, I am concerned about some of the incidences that have been reported to me relating to later in the evening, particularly in Farsley. And I know the police are feeling somewhat pressurised in terms of their their ability to move quickly on antisocial behaviour, but it's something we'll be watching very carefully, because we've made huge strides over the years in improving the experience for shoppers, diners, drinkers, you name it, young people in Farsley, and we don't see it jeopardised now with a few, and I'm not trying to overstate this, but there are a few incidents which leave me slightly concerned, and I'd like to see action on it.
I was concerned to read in a number of the reports about people being attacked and robbed, and weapons being threatened if not used.
Yes.
Any other comments, please? Councillor Carlin.
Thank you, Chair. It's a comment more than a question, but it's just to highlight, because the meetings aren't in public, I realised, obviously, but I'm one of the representatives on the West Leeds Local Care Partnership, and it does have some detail there about a project we're running, but I thought I'd get a bit more in depth with what we've been looking in. One of the main health concerns in the area that comes out, as opposed to Leeds generally, which is respiratory conditions, especially in young children, and the amount of time some young children are spending in hospital due to respiratory problems from a range of causes has been huge, especially compared to looking at other areas. There are little pockets of it, some in areas of the Bramley side, which is also covered in that, and Councillor Ritchie sits on this with me. Some in areas in our ward in Carvel and Farsley, probably linked to being around major roads. So what's good to see is we've got the housing department are really engaged in those meetings and are looking at where those issues could be occurring because of poor housing. Either we would hope it wouldn't be the council stock, but they are looking into where it's private stock as well to make sure that that isn't impacting on children's health. But then I'm looking to run something around outdoor air quality, looking at some of the schools that are in some of those targeted areas, see if we can get some air quality monitoring around those and see if that helps show why there's these hotspots. As I say, it'll be a range of different things that affect it. Some will be indoor, some will be outdoor air quality. But I think it is a real serious health concern in the area that's come up from the figures compared to many other areas. So that's one we're really focusing on.
That's also matched with the Bramley, Middleton and Wortley local care partnership, of which I'm a member with Councillor Ritchie. Sorry, Councillor Carter.
Yes, one of the key areas when I look at my casebook is the speed with which the council deals with damp issues in people's homes. It's still not up to scratch, and for young people particularly and elderly people particularly living with damp issues in their homes, 24 hours a day does more damage than anything else, and there's a lot of work to be done there. I mean, it's not long since the council received a letter from the then Secretary of State asking the council what they were doing to combat damp, and Councillor Carlin makes an interesting point about the private sector and private rented accommodation. The same occurs there. I visited somebody only a couple of weeks ago living in pretty desperate conditions, mainly caused by damp, and getting action on a multi-agency basis proves extremely difficult sometimes, and anything that means that we can move more quickly to improve living conditions where there is damp and the attendant issues that has for people with respiratory problems is welcome, but there's a long way to go, I tell you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Back to you, Natalie.
Thank you, Chair. There was just two things that I wanted to raise, if that's okay. One is in regards to agenda item 8, which is the finance report, which I just going back to. Just in regards to the Farming Wortley Fund Day, potentially next year offices might change, but I didn't know whether members felt like they wanted to ring fence it now, so plans could go ahead, or wait to June. If it's in August, it might just be a bit short notice. That was just a question.
Any comments? My personal preference would be to ring fence it now because it is an early one. Councillor Blackburn.
As it was set up as part of dealing with deprivation, I think it needs ring fencing.
You just want to go in the talent competition again. Any other thoughts, people? Any other thoughts on that? Are people ready to approve that? Thank you, Natalie. And apologies, I thought would.
Apologies, Chair, I missed that one. And the only other thing is to advise, as of June, there will be the minimum conditions, if members would like to change those, whether it stays as a one pot for all wards or whether it's a ward by ward budget.
Councillor Blackburn.
I would say that's inappropriate at the moment, as we will not be the same in a month's time, probably.
I think that's yet to be decided. So we'll decide that at a later date. The update report?
That's it from me, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. We've had comments on the crimes issues. Any other issues from the update report? Okay then, I'll move on to item 10, which is from Leeds Streets for all consultation for Leeds Streets for All consultation and the public responses paper that we received. And we have our officers are in the room to give us that. Would you like to present your report?
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So, yeah, I just want to report back on the Leeds Streets for All consultation that we actually ran. It ran from 29th of July to the 8th of September last year. And Joe, my colleague here, who presented earlier, explained how that was to try and find, ask residents in your 3 wards sort of questions about how we could improve travel and access to more sustainable travel, the travel network, and in your community area. We put out the consultation. It ran for 6 weeks. We had like 3,500 visitors on the consultation page, 259 respondents, 799 contributions, because obviously some people were multiple contributions to the scheme. A total of 1,164 relevant comments have been analysed, and I'll come into the sort of system we've used for that. Again, it was on to remind everybody, it was on the 5 main themes, which you can see along the bottom there, which is vehicles and parking, which we know we've already touched on earlier with the Fairfield School. Walking and wheeling, so that's access in local movements rather than walking and wheeling across the whole district. That's how people want to be able to sustainably access and get across local communities. Cycling, infrastructure and encouraging people to cycle more, more active travel. Access to the actual network that's existing. And you're quite lucky, there's lots of rail stations and rail links and potentially mass transit in the future coming along. So there's a lot of good access to local transit and interchange points. And then the general street environment across the board. So the full report is in the pack, but there's examples of how we've analysed the data. This is a couple of sort of maps that we've produced, one related to vehicle and parking, one related to cycling. And I don't know if you can quite see the small sort of orbs, but the larger circles are basically where there's more respondents, so more people are putting comments. So they're telling you the clusters of where the areas are that we probably need to focus on. When we've analysed the responses and the data, the qualitative data, lots of people, vehicle and parking tended to be the most people wanted to talk about. That's clearly very emotive, and there's lots of examples of inappropriate parking and parking management requirements in general that I think we need to address. That's coming out there, and that's certainly what your residents are telling us. But it's spread quite across all 3 wards, as you can see there. Cycling, which is another example here, but that's again spread across, but there's more of a concentration in the Farnley and Wortley area. So it's interesting how different people are viewing different sort of elements across the 3 wards, sorry. Other analysis that we're doing, I'm not expected to be able to go through all this, but we've dug into the actual responses themselves. So although you've got the 5 main themes, there's loads of subcategories of themes that we've gone through and classified as well, and that gives you a split of sort of the breakdown of vehicles and parking. So yeah, inappropriate parking is probably the highest, 26% there, which can relate to sort of people blocking footpaths, parking inappropriate on corners so buses can't get past, at schools, all that sort of thing that we've already mentioned. But it also gives you a bit more of a detailed breakdown as well of other elements. So it's not just, there's an issue with parking. We've tried to understand what that actually is. And similar for cycling, similar for all the other themes, we've done the same level of breakdown. In terms of, and you already obviously know what's happening in your areas as well, but there's some big things going on all the time. This consultation will feed into those works, but it's to complement and look at the local community elements rather than the big national funded schemes which have different criteria. different requirements and then manage in a different way. This is trying to capture the bits that we're not including, so that if we do look at the existing things like annual programme, which our maintenance team and traffic engineering teams do, what we're trying to do with this consultation is align the strategic elements that we need to put into these existing processes to give a better chance, of attracting more funding through bids, because we've already got that information there from the general public, but also streamline our internal processes so that they have more of a strategic hook that matches our transport strategy. So by default, we then start to achieve more holistically on our transport strategy objectives. So there's multiple things we can feed into this. Again, it's early days. We've only got sort of 2/3 of the way through the districts. We've got 2 more that the last consultations are happening at the moment. So hopefully by the summer we'll have all 10, a complete district wide, and we can have a different view on how we can have a deep dive of the data then and see how it links. Again, on their potential new local walking and cycling, we're doing the LC WIP programs happening at the moment, which is looking at all the new cycling and walking links across. A colleague of mine is doing that. Clearly this will feed into this and use the data that's coming out of this to help support those elements as well, so that we don't have to keep going out and consulting as much as we needed to. We've got a rich set of data that we can use on tap that everybody can access, including yourselves. Clearly, Vision Zero, road safety, collisions analysis and everything will be fed into this. We've got some basic stats there. There's a heat map embedded into the tool, which I'll touch on in a second, but that gives you a breakdown, of the KSIs, which I'm sure you're already aware from other sources within your area. That'll be fed into that as well. Clearly, there's a lot of comments that relate to safety, collisions and stuff coming from the residents. That again can be fed back into the various teams to help support their work as well. So it's a multifaceted sort of data set that we're trying to share with people. Everybody loves a heat map, I'm being told, so we've got one in. This basically shows you the key areas where you're getting the most hits when people dropped the pin and left the response. So these are the areas basically where people are asking for help or suggesting there's a challenge on an issue that we should be looking at and trying to fix within our forward plans, future transport improvement schemes, or anything that, community-led functions that you're all talking about already. What we've done internally is our sort of clever data team in transport strategy have developed effectively it's a dashboard or a tool that's all the coded responses that come through the Commonplace website where we did the online consultation is now all fed into this. So you can manipulate this data set by you can see on there by the various themes, by the agreements. So obviously gives you a sentiment. So how strong are people in favour of that particular sort of response, and there are various different subcategories, and by community committee or by the whole district when we've got all 10. So you can select it on and off. So you can see where parking is an issue, but then you can also deep dive into where it could be more specific questions you're asking, and it shows you the map. So that's a really interactive tool. We're still developing this. It's something that it's only as good as the data that's in there. But this is an open source effectively internally, so you as members and people within the council can be able to access this. You can't really break it as such. So you can go and have a play and have a look and see what's happening in your local area and see if there's anything that picks up with what you may have heard from your residents, or you may have a personal interest in and want to try and take it forward. So that we're trying to make it as sort of open, as free and accessible as possible. In terms of the report, which has more detail in, we were tasked with creating a map. So that's the map and a list of potential proposed interventions. Now these are not specific ones. Some of them are quite general. Some of them might target at certain areas. This information or these proposals have been taken or drafted directly from the information we've got through the consultation. So when you go through that, have that in your mind, because there's other elements that you might think, oh, such and such is happening, but it might not have been picked up in this specific consultation. But saying that, that's the sort of links we need to fill in, and your sort of personal knowledge of your local areas could feed into those Again, these proposed interventions, we've worked on through that with the team. They're not exhaustive. There's probably loads more we can come up with. There could be ones that you or colleagues may want to prioritise internally. But we think we've got a good spread. All the locations, again, are linked to where the heat maps were the strongest. So that's why there's sort of gaps in certain areas. That might be an obvious question. That doesn't mean we can't look at those as well. The data's still there. But we're trying to look at the ones that are the most, there's the most information and the most sort of issues being raised by the residents. And that's where we've come up with a list. I think there's about 16 in total. Interestingly, we did pick up, and there's lots of responses about the Fairfield School, inappropriate parking, which I haven't spoken to anybody initially, so it sort of proves, in essence, it's worked. It's picked up that. That's something we definitely need to work on, and it's exactly the sort of information and intervention, arguably quite small in the scheme of things, but massively important to the local community, that we might miss or not see as early as possible and miss it being involved in the future programmes and such like. So I think that's a good example of where it can work. So yeah, what happens next effectively, we've come back to yourselves with a list of our sort of areas, a draft proposal, a draft plan, a report for you to review. We normally say, 2 weeks or so to feed back to us with any amendments, anything that we think we've missed, anything that you want to any discussions points on, or points that you want to add. And then we will then publish those results, high-level version, back on the Commonplace website so that the general public and yourselves can see how we've analysed it and what sort of suggestions and proposals we're coming up with. We've done that process for 4 now, and then there's yourselves in Inner East that went in parallel will be the next, outer south, inner south, and then inner and outer northeast are the last ones. So we're working at pace through, and yeah, getting good responses. So over to you, any questions or any ideas?
I've got a number of people waiting to ask questions. Thank you for that, Rupert. I do have some first, and then Councillor Harper.
Thank you. Could you put the data analysis tool back up again, please? That slide.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
So did you say this was on the Commonplace tool?
No.
Can you give us information, send us information, how we can access that? But if you can put it back up, I think it'd be helpful. Because this is just on the PowerPoint, it's not in the report.
Just a second, I think I've gone out of everything.
Sorry, it's essentially what it will be is that when we publish, once you've signed off the information that we've put in the report, we will put the information on Commonplace, and there will be a link with a live, so people will be able to access that map live. But because we haven't published it at the moment, it's not live.
Okay, I'm just going to say it's not necessarily something I'm particularly familiar with, so if you could send us the details of how to do that, that would be useful. The point I want to make, that's what's not in the report, and I was quite disappointed it's not in the actual report, but does appear to be on this tool, is the link between what the issue is and where the issue is. So it's showing we've got a lot of responses in an area, but are they all saying that it's parking, or it's or one of the other issues? How do we identify what the issue is? I mean, obviously we're now going to have access to this tool, but people reading this report won't know. You've had 20 responses somewhere. Are they all saying the same thing? So that's the problem. Or are they all saying different things? So that would be really a useful tool it'd be useful information to actually have in the format of the report. And I don't think it's really that meaningful just to say we've had a lot of replies and we've had a lot of things about this issue if you don't link them up. So I'd really like to see that in the report. And the other thing, and it's just a bit on page 65, where we're looking at the indicative strategic cycle network. So there's the existing cycle network, there's the national cycle network, and there's the indicative cycle network. But my understanding is that the Armley Town Street proposals also include some cycle network which don't appear to be on this plan. So I'm just wondering how you linking up with things that we know are going to happen but aren't aren't in this report.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Army Town Street element, clearly that the focus on that was in the inner west. But yeah, clearly.
Well, some of it's in Farnley, weren't they?
I understand. So yeah, so we can amend that and obviously share that. So that's correct, effectively. Again, these are a draft, so exactly that's the question I'm after. In terms of the actual sort of indicative, the map or the LC WIP early engagement map that we're in, that's still sort of a work in progress, but we can happily amend those to review or match your approval on that.
Yeah, I mean, do you see what I mean? So if you've got the colours and the dots, do you see how, I mean, I'm not sure how you do it within the format of the current report, but it seems to me that that's quite an important to show that, especially when, you know, we've got interest in particular issues in our ward.
Yeah, so how can we present it better? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, Councillor Carter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's always useful to have comprehensive information of this sort. I'm not being sarcastic, but on page 67, I'm interested to know map number 4 where Buttershaw Lane, Pudsey is. I think it means Richard Shaw Lane. Yeah. And similarly on number 5, the Bolton Royd Park area of Pudsey, which I guess you mean either Chatsworth Road Recreation Ground or you mean Bolton Royd area. I think it's important to get these things right. Additionally, on page 63, some of the key highway improvements at the bottom before the chart. Some of the key highway improvements planned for the inner east are shown on table 1, by which I think you're referring to outer west. So it would help to get those things correct. However, as regards the heat map itself, you're spot on. And I'm not surprised that you had the vast majority of responses from Carvely and Farsley ward. And any of the ward members, I think, could take it to precisely where these locations are. The big question is, for me, that you want feedback from us, which you will get, obviously, in writing as well. But it's high time that these issues were dealt with where they can be. And I have to say, sometimes it's residents themselves who don't help the situation. But, for example, we've now got speed cameras operating on Farsley Town Street, and various number of tickets were given over the period of time, and I expected it to be considerable. I was gobsmacked by the number. 200 tickets over 2 periods of time, and they're going back. Well, we have been promised they will be going back to do more of this, because only one part of Town Street has been done so far, and in one direction. And it's, again, I mentioned Farsley Town Street before, thriving shopping street, has to be safe for everybody. Young people, old people, people just out shopping, and also for vehicle drivers, obviously. Again, if you look at the area you mark 5, which is the Bolton Royd Park area, which I would call moving up to Thornbury. Again, terrible parking issues. People, I have to say, deliberately blocking people's drives. And it's taken too long for the police and parking services to start ticketing, but they've started now. I'm delighted that it was reported to me only the day before yesterday, a big blitz on Daleside Road, Peckover Drive, a lot of customers, I think, of a particular establishment, with photographs of people parked, completely stopping cars, getting out of their own drives. or the owners getting the cars out. Not acceptable. It shows no courtesy whatever. And if we can somehow get the message across, you don't park so far up to a driveway to make it impossible for the people who live at the house you've blocked to get their vehicle out. What if there's an emergency? And we can all recite stories of emergencies. In Carvley, big problem again. The rat running has increased. It tailed off for a while when the Greengates Junction was improved by Bradford City Council. It's now back to almost as bad as ever. And again, we need you to come back with resolutions for us to put to our constituents, and I'm sure I speak for everybody else in their own wards. We need you to come back with resolutions to deal with these issues, because constituents are getting more and more fed up. The complaints become more and more, and understandably so, more and more. What are you going to do about this? And, you know, this is a great report, but what we want is action.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Carlisle.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it'll feed on because we're aware of quite a lot of the same issues. But first, thank you for running it, because yeah, it's something back in the various times, and I was deputy member, I think, when you were starting to think of running this, and it's something really important to do, because these are the kind of issues that people are concerned of more than everything else. These little schemes are the things that matter to people more than the big schemes we're running everywhere. So thanks for running it. It's great to see that it has had a success. And one, it confirms some things that I'm sure as ward members we already knew were happening, but it does get more of that evidence behind it and gets it in a formal setting. So that's really good. I mean, when we do street surgeries across the ward, speeding, antisocial car use, various things like that are the number one issue people raise with us across all different areas. So that's picked it out. I think my question probably comes on to very similar point. What are we going to do about it? So there's a few areas you've picked out that we've talked about earlier today, or ones that you brought up, Andrew. That one, the really clear cluster in Carvley about rat running issues, of which there's more than 100 people have responded on that area. We did write to them and tell them about the consultation, so we might have biased the consultation there slightly, but it's an issue they've been talking about for a long time, and obviously they wanted to be included. Now, for that, there is something I think that we've been talking to highways officers that could be trialled as a scheme, and that's something that could be done with quite low cost, or at least we could get enough funding to get through a consultation and see what people think about it before then putting for larger. We've talked about Farsley Farfield Primary School. Similar, that's one we've been up to, and Councillor Timmins and I had a meeting with the highways officer on site there, and the head teacher, and there is something that could be done very low cost, probably, with a bit of relining more than anything. And so that's just a little bit of money that could solve that. That's got 25 or so responses on your list. Farsley Town Street, Andrew's pointed out there, Councillor Carter, around the speeding issues that we've had down there, and it's good that they are. Hopefully some of those figures will come down, the people you've had responding that after that's been checked up. But my big question, I guess, is that, so what funding is available to start with some of these? From my understanding of previous times, there was a little bit of funding available perhaps to do some little measures, but then the idea was to have this wider array of schemes that we could put into the next funding settlement that we'll get and have ready, so that we could get spending that money, or that we could package together and try and ask for funding. But some of these ones that we think we could do now, and I think highways officers our highways engineer could be delivering within the next financial year. Is there funding for those, and how should we recommend those to you out of this report?
There isn't specific funding allocated to this, but the information is being directly fed in to our highways or traffic engineering team, who will then build this information into their forward plan. An example we gave was Leeds Bradford Road. I know it's not your area, which they were developing a road safety scheme, but the information that we picked out of this has now shown that we can actually make it a lot more than just a traffic safety scheme and add in sort of active travel measures, better access to bus stops and things like that. So they're now reviewing that scheme and additional funding sourced to actually match that increased ambition. So that is already starting to happen with some of the community committee areas that we've already gone through. That, it's been said, we're developing a pipeline of works through various different regions. I'm sure Councillor Carroll is aware of this, for the next huge funding of Sustainable City CRSTS2 funding, which is due in 2027. This information is being fed directly into that as well, so that we can bid for early and get strategic outline business cases developed for potential larger schemes, but also clusters, as you say, and groups of smaller interventions that we can pull out of this information that will directly deliver some of the key bits in the local areas that you're saying. The funding mechanism is slightly different to what it was years ago. So there's allocations that we can do through WICA, that we can pull in different funding from revenue and capital to sort of put into these sort of schemes. Some of them, like the Fairfield element, a lot of the stuff like with our travel behaviour team and the school streets element, increasing the funding to that can help us, and then increasing funding to do some joint highways interventions, small scale interventions, but link the behaviour scheme element to the highways intervention. So you've got a whole route to school programme developed which needs funding. This will help supply and sustain, allow us to go, give us evidence to basically say we want a X amount of money to do this element, which has not just one bit in it, but about 4 or 5 different aspects. And that's how we're starting to build and develop the schemes going forward, using this information and other streams, other data sort of led information as well. So it's a slightly complex answer, I suppose, but in essence there isn't a pot of money just to do these, no, unfortunately, yet, but we could develop that sort of model for the next big tranche of funding in 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carroll, yeah?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that's a long answer that you had to give. I think the thing ward members will want to know really is, some of these are probably quite cheap. Some of these, relining a road could solve one of these problems.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that people would expect us to do within a number of months, rather than put in a funding bid for 2027. So I think if that could be reflective, we'll look at it. And then when you're sending these out to members more, some detail around where we think some of that funding could come from. Because actually we've had here, we might be doing some stuff in our ward that residents don't want. We'd much rather that we focus that money on the things they do want rather than the things they might not want, and seeing what happens there.
Yeah, on the same point, can I just jump in and say, it's the small things. It's the small things. And Leeds as a city seems to be able to do great big developments, greatly successful, but it comes down to something that should take 2, 3, 4 weeks or a couple of months, and we drop into a dirty great black hole and nothing happens, and people are getting sick of it, really.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Timmin.
Thank you, Chair. I think as the third member of our ward speaking, Councillor Carter and Councillor Carlyle have addressed quite a bit of what I was going to mention. But there are a few things. So I'm really pleased that people within our ward really engaged with this. I think we had probably 50% of the respondents. As Councillor Carlyle said, we wrote to people, we had a push on our social media as well. One thing I would say, though, is quite often, sometimes the areas that really do need help are the areas that don't always engage with these, so we just have to be really mindful of that. And I'm sure all three of us from our ward can attest that the issues and the heat maps reflect the things that we're hearing on a daily basis. I did feel, when I first read this, a little bit underwhelmed with the list of potential actions, but actually from what you said in your presentation, that kind of addressed that this is just kind of without the meat on the bones. Particularly Carveley, for example, because it was just one vague thing for the whole of the village. But this rat running issue that has been mentioned, you know, it's a massive issue, and we really, really need to just finally get to the bottom of it. Yeah, and then just to echo the points that were made as well, it's important that this isn't just seen as an exercise of going through the motions, but actually we have some positive action that comes out from it. And as has been mentioned, there's some stuff that actually we could get done quite quickly and easily. So it'd be good to see that action happening as soon as possible, really.
Thank you, Councillor Timmin. I don't know if there's any response needed to that, because I know Councillors Smith, Blackburn and Councillor Seary, did I see you had your hand up as well? So Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. Very informative, despite a couple of obvious errors, which I'm sure you can correct before it goes through. Couple of things, really. I think we would like, well, I'd certainly like some more information on the average speed cameras that we've got running, and what are the actual speeds now. Have they reduced? Is it a safe limit? How many tickets are handed out or penalties issued, etc. And I think that data is quite important, because it's a spine running right through, and I think we need that. The other thing that I would like to mention is the central crossroads traffic lights in Pudsey. They were upgraded to a smart or not so smart system. Basically, it's brought Pudsey to a car park. It's an absolute nightmare. The businesses are suffering. The residents are suffering. It's created rat running into local roads. It's done absolutely nothing for Vision Zero. There's been some very awful, scary near misses. The air quality is very poor, because all 4 roads are stationary at the same time, which is ridiculous in my opinion. It's done nothing for pedestrian safety, as I say. It's caused awful frustration for the drivers, for pedestrians, for the buses, for the businesses. It's just caused absolute lanigans, if I'm honest. And I think that we need to be looking at things like this. So we've taken a situation, we think we've improved it, we actually haven't, and we're tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking because of the pressure that we're putting on the officers on behalf of our residents. But nothing seems to be getting through. And that is, that's what we need to guard against. It's all very well doing these things, but where's the ripple? Action and impact. And so I think that is a very, very important point to remember when we're doing anything. So I think that needs to be taken into account. And then my final point, Chair, is action around all schools. I think we need to make sure that at every opportunity the lining's up to date. I think we need to make sure at every opportunity we've got everything in place that we need to keep our children safe. I think that there's been awful near misses near Waterloo School with parents parking on the zigzags, and then children can't safely cross the street. Honestly, I think it's a massive, massive issue, and I think that it needs to be taken extremely seriously. So, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Blackburn.
Thanks, Chair. Good report. I've got to say, a lot was in there. I've got to say, we knew in our ward we knew about anyway. I appreciate what Councillor Egg said about knowing what responses are, because we have been dealing with several road traffic problems over a number of years and done loads and loads of consultations, and then finished up out of the 3 projects that were involved. We finished up with one of them, and I actually thought, until I went to a meeting the other day, that had been scrapped as well. And sometimes what it is, actually solving the problem creates problems in the minds of other people, and I think we've got to appreciate that. But I would happy to see that you were talking about the cycleway down the ring road, which we seem to have been talking about now for 4 or 5 years. I think first meeting I went to, it must have been 5 years ago, when they mentioned about that, which seems to me a fairly easy thing to deliver. There's lots of room there, certainly between Ringways and Gelders Road. And as somebody, when you see me hobbling about, that used to run to work on a morning, when I was in a bit fitter state, as part of my training, that's the way I used to go. I didn't go down through Gyratory, I ran down that way, and that sort of joins on with cycleways in Oldbeck and Beeston. So it's an easy way for somebody cycling. It's flat, or relatively flat if you can have such a thing in Leeds, and it misses out the Gyratory, which is a death trap if you're on a bike, even with it being improved. So I think you've highlighted that thing, but actually what we need to do is do something about what the problems are, and not be talking about it, but actually get some resources. I know you've got to put this together to get it there, but people are getting fed up of coming up and being asked about things and then nothing happening, and that's what seems to be happening. Regards what we were saying about parking outside schools and that sort of thing. I mean, that happens everywhere. I mean, I can remember 2004, I chaired a scrutiny, when I chaired a scrutiny into the very same problems that we're having now outside schools, and we seem to get nowhere. But we've put lots and lots of yellow lines down in places, and my colleague referred something to our neighbours over in Armley the other day about where the 42 bus comes down bottom of Oldfield Lane. And you've got yellow lines all down there, and what you've got is you've got commercial vehicles from a company down there parked on them, and what happens? Nothing. And basically, we as an authority have got to start enforcing those yellow lines. That's part of the thing. I mean, I'd like to see us be in a position where we can enforce against people who are parking on pavements, but if we're not enforcing people on yellow lines where we've already got the powers, then that's half the problem. But as I say, I welcome report, but as I say, what we've got to do is we've got to get serious about actually delivering.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Councillor Seary.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it looks a fantastic platform. Disappointed that it only ran for 6 weeks during the school holiday, which I raised at the time. It's a different, you're hitting a different target. Obviously, 6 weeks during the summer compared to 6 weeks in the winter, people's habits change, cars, bikes, walking usage. So I'd like to see it open all year round so people who have got an issue with highways can be directed to the map and raise the queries that way. It'll save a lot of time with highways officers. And then how do you clear this of projects that have finished? For example, Putty traffic lights, nearly finished. A bit more tweaking to do, but that's on the scheme to implement. But that's nearly done. So how do we move on to get the next, project through the scheme?
Thank you, Councillor Seary. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of the year all round, sort of keeping the platform open, that is something that we're potentially considering. Once we've done all 10, we'll have clearly a data set for the entire district, so there'll be another set of data analysis to look at key themes across the whole district, because that could help us with economies of scale in terms of delivering things that are exactly the same issues across the city. So that is going to happen. There is discussions with our existing operations team that monitor all the queries and such like, and how a system like this, not necessarily this, will feed together to improve that sort of customer service, you know, that customer response, you know, query response management element. So yeah, exactly. We fully agree with what you said there, and that's something we are looking to. Again, that's a big program because it's changing processes that have been going for years and years and years, or adapting them, but it's feeding into the new sort of operating systems that they're developing for maintenance and other things. So that is something that we're definitely looking at, yeah.
Thank you. So I have a few queries myself, and then I'll hand over to Councillor Haig wants to ask one. Thank you for the report. Concerning you had road collision data. Can I ask where that came from?
That's provided by our collision team, basically, who do all the part of the Vision Zero team that we work on. So
right.
That's directly linked, yeah.
So it's not highways, because my concern is that highways data tends to be underestimated because it only counts accidents where there's been an injury, rather than the driver's experience of crashes. And it, for instance, is 5 Lanes End in Farnley and Wortley, where they said that there were 6 accidents in 7 years, and I had videos of 15 in the last 4. So I was just concerned about that, but that's different. That's the Zero team. That's great.
Yeah, as I say, that's the team, so that should be accurate, but I will check that. Councillor, and make sure that it matches what you're suggesting, but it is the same information that's fed into the wider Vision Zero team and the one that's adopted by West Yorkshire level now. So it's all built in. So it should match. And
just to be a bit parochial, I noticed the biggest feedback came from Farnley and Wortley, and one of the big instances was about cycling. Yet, I think we are actually matched with Pudsey, but we have absolutely no cycle infrastructure at all in either Farnley and Wortley, and I believe Pudsey do not have. Looking at that, those drawings, we have no cycle infrastructure. Yet you saw the indications of people raising it as an issue, and yet I don't see anything really in there other than the ring road.
No, you are correct. To be fair, I mean, I think partly the makeup of the area doesn't help, but you're quite right. It is a black stop, and that's part of the walking and cycling plan that colleagues are doing to try and unlock those areas. Because as you say, there's easier places to put cycling. We'll be honest, but we're now getting to the point where we need to join up the difficult bits. So this is hard, and this is where we need your members and local residents to really help us work out how we're going to do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haig.
Yeah, thank you. You talked about when you've got all these different surveys done across the whole city, sort of joining them together, and contrary to what some conspiracies will have you think in Leeds, we do allow people to cross ward boundaries. So how will that work in terms of identifying kind of cross-boundary issues, clusters that are close to those boundaries, identifying the same issues? How will you deal with that data?
Probably a good question, to be fair. I think my personal view is when you've got the full set, then you're looking at a district level, so the ward boundaries disappear a little bit, and you effectively bed into the existing forward plans that our traffic team will do. It's influencing those forward plans so that they're more detailed, and as I say, they've got consultation information or engagement information already bedded into them. So part of the criteria for what's prioritised should link directly to the information we're getting through this, and in theory then, if it matches a lot of what you're already hearing in your surgeries, then it should tie in and get that proper prioritisation. Again, we're only just going through this stage, so I'm sort of erring on the side of caution that will happen straight away, but that's the intention, that we make this more efficient and more targeted to the areas and the responses that people are having. So having that local element that will then hopefully deliver the small scales a lot quicker, that will help you do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to try and tie this up. Any other queries other than Councillor Timmins? Any other? So Councillor Timmins.
Thank you, Chair. Just thinking about what Councillor Blackburn was saying, in terms of people just blatantly ignoring where we've had yellow lines put in, for instance. It seems to me like the enforcement team is it's based out of this building, and I don't feel we always get our fair share on the outer areas, and I think we probably need a little bit more, and I think as a committee it'd be nice to raise that. Myself and Councillor Carlisle had a meeting with the head of service, and we requested this, and we also made inquiries about extra enforcement dedicated to our area, the Outer West, possibly and potentially funded through this committee, but we was told we probably wouldn't be able to do due to capacity issues. But you know, from the conversations, you know, maybe it's something that actually we really do need. And like I say, I think we do need our fair share. And I'm sure we've all seen examples where, particularly in our ward, for example, we've just had some new lines put in as part of a TRO, and some of them, Red Lane, for example, just being blatantly ignored. So at the moment, we have to keep just putting requests in. It seems like a circle of request and request again, rather than something actually dedicated to our area.
Thank you, Councillor Timmins. I think that's a frustration we all share. It's not so much the parking, it's the parking enforcement that's the issue. Thank you for that. One last chance.
Sorry, very quickly. And passing the buck between departments. Oh, it's not us, it's the police. No, it's not the police, it's traffic enforcement. Come on, just sort it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for your report. And any feedback, can we please give that back by email on the report? Thank you. Right, folks, is there any other business? Anyone, any other items of business? Just to let you know that the date for the next meeting hasn't been confirmed, because obviously there may be changes to our structures. That concludes today's meeting. Thank you for your attendance and contributions. I now declare this meeting closed.